Merry Christmas, my beloved Batties, and welcome to another episode of Truth Behind the Tale, the series where I take a look at some of our most famous fairy tales and delve into their real-world historical and cultural origins. For this month's episode, I am in full makeup in honour of Christmas, wearing my trusty wig, which was the closest candy, sugary looking thing that I thought I had, and I also have a candy cane on my cheek. Because today we are going to be taking a look at the Nutcracker and the Mouse King. The most well-known variant of the Nutcracker, and indeed the one that's most commonly adapted, is the ballet by Tchaikovsky from 1892. The story of the ballet itself usually varies between productions, and not even the characters' names are set in stone, but most of them follow the same basic outline. However, its libretto comes from an 1844 treatment by Alexandre Dumas, who was the author of The Count of Monte Cristo and The Three Musketeers, and that itself was an adaptation of an earlier story by German author E.T.A. Hoffmann. Hoffmann's story predates the Dumas version by 30 years, and it features no sugar plum fairy, no land of sweets, and the Nutcracker himself is not a cursed prince, at least not in the same way as he's usually portrayed. In the case of this fairy tale, tracing the pre-written origins of the story has proved quite tricky, so we're going to have to start with the novella itself. Marie Stahlbaum is a 7-year-old girl with a younger sister named Louise and an older brother named Fritz. On Christmas Eve they receive many presents from their godfather Drosselmeyer, who is a famous clockmaker and inventor. Among the gifts is a Nutcracker, which Marie's father says belongs to the entire family, but Marie is so fond of him that her father says that she can be his special caretaker. However, Fritz plays roughly with the Nutcracker and breaks his jaw, so Marie bandages it with a piece of ribbon from her dress. Later, when everyone else is in bed, she witnesses a battle in the parlour, and this is where things start to differ slightly. In the ballet, and by extension in the collective mind, the fight is between the Mouse King and his army of gingerbread soldiers and mice, and the Nutcracker with dolls standing by to tend to the wounded. But in the original story there are no gingerbread soldiers, only mice, and the Nutcracker himself, who does not grow to life size, takes command of Marie's dolls as an army. The mice soon overwhelm them, and in an attempt to protect the Nutcracker, Marie takes off her shoe and flings it at the Mouse King, causing her to fall over and cut her arm badly on the cabinet door in the process. The Nutcracker doesn't transform into a prince, Marie isn't taken into the Nutcracker's realm, and the Mouse King is not dead. Oh, and the Mouse King has 7 heads with a crown on each of them. For as weird and gross as that sounds, it may have actually been inspired by the phenomena of rat kings. This is a rare occurrence where the tails of several rats intertwine and bind together, usually by hair or a sticky substance such as sap or gum, or even through compacted feces. As many as 32 rats have been found entangled as rat kings, and despite the name, it can happen to any small mammal with sufficiently long tails, including mice. And oddly enough, they're particularly associated with Germany, so it's likely that Hoffmann was aware of them and incorporated them into his story as the 7 heads of the Mouse King. Back to the actual story now. Godfather Drosselmeyer fixes the Nutcracker's jaw and tells Marie a story about Princess Pirlipat and Madame Mouserings, also known as the Mouse Queen. After an argument between the king and the Mouse Queen resulted in traps being set to kill her children, Madame Mouserings swore revenge on Pirlipat. While the princess was originally guarded by cats who were supposed to keep the mice at bay, Madame Mouserings managed to get past them, and she cursed the princess, turning her ugly, giving her a massive head, a great grinning mouth, and a wispy beard, like a Nutcracker. The king placed the blame of the curse on the trap maker, whose name also happened to be Drosselmeyer, and tasked him with finding a cure for his daughter. Drosselmeyer learned that the only way to cure Pirlipat's curse was to have her eat the Krakatuk nut, cracked and handed to her by a man who had never worn boots or shaved, who must then take 7 steps backwards without stumbling, and all with his eyes closed. After searching for years, Drosselmeyer discovered the nut in the possession of his cousin, whose son was the man needed to crack it. Isn't that convenient? The king said that whoever broke the nut would be rewarded with Pirlipat's hand in marriage, and many hopeful suitors actually broke their teeth on the nut before Drosselmeyer's nephew tried it. He performed the task successfully and Pirlipat regained her beauty, but when he was stepping backwards, he accidentally stepped on the Mouse Queen's tail and the princess's curse fell onto him. He was turned into a Nutcracker, but Pirlipat was unsympathetic and despised his ugliness, instead refusing to marry him and banishing him from the castle. Meanwhile, Madame Mouserink's son rose to become the Mouse King. Later, the Mouse King comes to Marie and threatens to bite the Nutcracker into pieces if she doesn't hand over her dolls and sweets. Terrified, she does hand them over, but she also provides the Nutcracker with a sword from one of Fritz's toy soldiers so he can kill the Mouse King. The next night, the Nutcracker returns to her with the Mouse King's 7 crowns as proof of his death, and he takes her to the Doll Kingdom to celebrate, but when she falls asleep, she wakes up in her own bed. Her dreams are not believed by her family, but she proclaims to the Nutcracker that if he were real, she would not behave like Pirlipat and would love him no matter what he looked like. Godfather Drosselmeyer's nephew suddenly arrives, and he tells Marie that he was the Nutcracker and her love for him broke the curse and made him human again. In a year and a day, he comes back for her, and the two return to the Doll Kingdom where they rule as king and queen. While on the surface there isn't much that's overly different between the source material and the more famous adaptations, The Nutcracker and the Mouse King is akin to other fairy tales of the time and of previous eras. For example, in the original, the conflict between the Mouse King and the Nutcracker goes on for much longer, and it's much more grotesque, or at least has grotesque allusions. And of course, the girl protagonist marries a prince instead of being returned to her own world following the celebrations. And speaking of 8-year-old Marie's marriage in the Nutcracker, that makes her a whopping 1 year older than Snow White, who was 7 when she was married in the original Brothers Grimm tale. Even though the Nutcracker is set at Christmas in every version, the transformation of the Doll Kingdom into the land of sweets, complete with fairies, flowers and Mother Ginger, tend to make the Dumas and Tchaikovsky versions the most synonymous with the festive season. But the recent movie The Nutcracker and the Four Realms has brought the darkness of the Hoffmann novella somewhat back into popular culture, or at least more than it was previously. And if you want to really go back to this story's roots and retrace the original fairy tale, I highly recommend the Hoffmann version. It's a lovely piece of winter reading, perfect for this time of year. Thank you very much for joining me for this festive episode of Truth Behind the Tale. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please give it a big thumbs up if you did. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single episode. I also want to thank all you Batties who have joined me this year. It's been an absolute amazing year for me, and I can't wait to continue the fun in 2019. Have an absolutely wonderful holiday season no matter where you are in the world and no matter what you celebrate, and I will see you all again very soon in another video. Bye!